issue, and then why I think it is important, once again, to the state of mind. Gail's husband is David Schlossberg, a very, very talented lawyer. I've known David since he's been 12. He wasn't a talented lawyer at 12. He was a good basketball player.
And you
at
were
12.
15 then, right? So it was.
Yeah, I was a lot older than David. So David represented this company that was sued by a guy named Charles Gray, and Charles Gray is Andrew's lifelong partner. And in that lawsuit, it dealt with stock, was also wrongful termination.
It was wrongful termination, stock, evaluation of stock options pursuant to the contract.
So they went to Pullman and Comley. Andrew worked for Pullman and Comley, and Andrew was the lawyer for Gray. So he represented Gray in court. And it was very, very contentious, to say the least. To a point that Andrew called David and said, is this the way you practice law? Is this the way your firm practices law? And kind of went after David a little bit. And he actually called Gail too and said, is this the way your husband practices law? Is this the way your husband firm practices law? And in the caucus room, Gail felt very ostracized by Andrew. So David gets out of the case by giving it to a subordinate in his office to go through. Charles Gray wins the case. So they're successful in the case. So, but there was this friction and animosity. So David had another case with some other client named Artie's Auto Body. Andy's Auto Body. And he won a judgment of
$39 million.
$39 million for insurance manipulating this, that, and the other thing.
Fixing, the body shops were, they'd say it's $1,000. The insurance company say it's only worth, we're only gonna give you $500. So they price fixed against body shops.
So they won $39 million. It goes to the Supreme Court. So David, knowing this animosity exists, Andrew's now on the Supreme Court, knowing he yelled at his wife, writes a note to Andrew and say, listen, I prefer you not to sit on this case. I think you can't judge it fairly. And Andrew doesn't write back. So David writes a second letter saying, Andrew, prefer you don't sit on this case. Andrew doesn't write back. So finally, they do this motion, which attaches 3 affidavits. The other party does a motion in opposition. Andrew writes a decision. It's the first time I've seen a Supreme Court decision in all caps. The whole thing was in capitals, as if yelling back little. Never disputes any of the confrontation with Gail. Never disputes it, but argues it's an objective finding. I don't have any interest in this case. Therefore, I could sit, and he sits on the case. What I think, and the case is overturned. David loses the case. They find against David, and they send it back. When Andrew's testifying, when I met Andrew, and I've talked to Andrew about these things, I did not have the detail I had now. I had just read it once, so I asked very cursory. But Andrew, when I asked him about what do you do for recusal, he said this at the hearing. He said, I believe it's objective, not subjective. But then he tells about a case that he sat on, and he had to go around with this attorney about 16 years ago, some other attorney. And he remembered that interaction was not very pleasant. And he remembered that he felt that this lawyer was somewhat questionable. So, but he felt it was 16 years ago, he could sit on this case and be fair-minded about the decision. When he started reading the cases, the briefs, he called the court up and said, I have to get off of this case because I'm remembering who this guy is, how he practices law. This is what he said. So I got off of the case. Which then leads me to believe, why would he not get off of Dave's case? Now, what Andrew was very upset about was Charles Gray was his lifelong partner, so I'm sure he had a personal,
now
husband, personal matter, which would heighten the scrutiny, I would think. But he, in one case, had not had an interaction with 16 years. David's case was only 10 years. which he cites. It's been 10 years ago, but it wasn't relevant because 16 years ago. And in that case, he didn't like the way the lawyer practiced, which is what he said to David. And in David's case, it was this relationship that Andrew had that was being attacked by David's law
Very
firm.
quickly, they alleged emotional distress as a result of the wrongful firing. So as part of that, David's firm asked for Charles's medical records and then wanted Andrew McDonald as his partner to take a deposition to see what his mental state was to prove that. So they fought about the release of the records, and Andrew, and they thought they were harassing him because they were homosexual or whatever the case may be. They ended up dropping that allegation, so.
Well, they released the medical records,
They
then it was
did,
dropped.
and then they dropped the.
They dropped the,
allegation.
because Andrew dropped the allegation because they want to take his deposition, so if you drop the allegation, he stays on the case. So,
But how is that not a conflict of interest to
Well-
be hearing that case,
well,
you know?
and the case here was the auto body case, different than this case.
Right,
But still, the fact is that animosity was just there. So it raises the issue in my mind is you put these patterns together, it's a result that I want to achieve. And that's what makes it very scary.